Welcome to the Medicaid Enterprise Certification Toolkit. We've broken this training video into 3 parts. In the first section, we'll tour the toolkit components. In the second section, we explain the certification lifecycle and how states can transition into it, even if they have already begun module development. In section 3, we cover how a state can prepare for a milestone review. Let's get started. There is a welcome document that gives a brief description of the other documents and release notes. The Medicaid Enterprise Certification Lifecycle document contains detailed guidance about the certification process. There is a diagram of the lifecycle with quick reference sheets, a list of required artifacts for each of the milestone reviews, standard wording for the states to include in their IV&V RFPs and contracts, the IV&V Progress Report template, a Concept of Operations template for the state to use if it wishes, as well as a MIDAS self-assessment tool that the state can use if it chooses, a table showing how the old 2007 criteria map to the new checklist, a Project Partnership Understanding template, Uniform RFP Guide, a Certification Request Letter template, a map of MIDA business areas to certification checklist criteria, and a guide to help states prepare for a milestone review. The certification checklist set is also posted with the toolkit. Let's now look at the certification lifecycle diagram since it gives a big picture view of the process. This is Appendix A of the toolkit. Across the top are the 4 lifecycle phases, and along the left are 3 major roles: CMS, the state and its developers, and the IV&V contractor. The 3 types of milestone reviews are shown as large vertical rectangles. When any of these activities are clicked, the reader is taken to an at-a-glance sheet. These quick reference pages summarize the purpose of the activity, who is involved, what is expected, and the lower-level steps. Greater detail about each activity can be found in the Medicaid Enterprise Certification Lifecycle, or MECL document. Let's look at the MECL. This document covers topics such as the importance of a system integrator and state program management function, and an explanation of how the lifecycle and APD processes fit together. Other sections include roles, details about the activities we just saw in the workflow diagram, coverage of the checklists, and how to prepare for a milestone review. The list of required artifacts for each of the milestone reviews shows what documents are needed for each type of review. In this column is a list of the document names. The next column shows the minimum necessary elements in the document. Note that this is only the minimum CMS requires. The state may require more. Also, waterfall and agile methods call documents by different names. We've tried to account for this. The last 3 columns show for which milestones each artifact is required. Next in the toolkit is the standard language for including in IV&V acquisition documents such as RFIs, RFPs, contracts, and contract modifications. The state can copy the language into its own procurement templates. The wording should be included as written. Keep in mind, this is what CMS requires of the IV&V contractor. The state may make additional requirements. For example, extend the scope beyond certification and well into operations and maintenance. However, the state may not hire the IV&V contractor to test software. True technical and managerial independence must be maintained. So, the IV&V contractor cannot report to the same state entity that manages the MMIS project. And, since the IV&V contractor will be reviewing the performance of the software testers, it cannot perform that role. A state may choose to hire a separate quality assurance contractor to perform software testing. The last section delineates the scope of the IV&V reviews to include project management and technical inspections. The regional offices will be looking for this language when they review states' IV&V contracts. The MMIS IV&V Progress Report template is what the state and CMS use to track progress toward certification. The report is divided into 3 tabs in an Excel workbook. The IV&V contractor fills out the IV&V and programmatic tabs and sends the report simultaneously to CMS and the state. If it is a regular quarterly report, CMS may include comments in the CMS tab and send it to the state and IV&V contractor. If it is a report submitted in preparation for a milestone review, CMS will fill out the CMS tab as its post-review summary and send the completed workbook back to the state and to the IV&V contractor. For reports being submitted prior to a milestone review, the IV&V contractor must include all completed checklists that pertain to the modules scheduled to be reviewed. Along with pertinent module checklists, the technical architecture, information architecture, and standards and conditions checklists must be included since these apply to every module. On to the next Toolkit component, the MMIS Concept of Operations template. This has been included as a courtesy to states which may or may not choose to use it. Appendix F is a MITA self-assessment scorecard that a state may find helpful when doing its self-assessment. States are encouraged, though not required, to use it. Appendix G maps the 2007 criteria to the latest checklists. The next document in the toolkit is the Project Partnership Understanding template. This PPU is used to document decisions made between the state and CMS during the first activity in the life cycle. The Uniform RFP Guide was written by PSTG and the MMIS cohort as a collection of lessons learned to help states as they prepare acquisition documents. States are not required to follow the recommendations, but may find the information helpful. The Certification Request Letter template is provided for states to use to request a final certification review. The map of MITA business areas to certification criteria shows how each certification criterion corresponds to a MITA business area. Finally, the Milestone Review Preparation Guide gives states practical advice on how to get ready for a milestone review. The checklist set is contained in a downloadable zip file as well. Now that we have seen the toolkit components, let's go to section 2 where we will look at key activities in the life cycle. In the toolkit, the certification life cycle is shown from beginning to end, but many states are already in the middle of upgrading their systems. A state that has already begun its journey will work with its regional office to determine at what phase it will transition into the process. States are encouraged to develop their modules in an agile fashion. They can also stagger the design, development, and release of their modules. A state may even send a single module through the certification lifecycle. Let's look at an example. This state is planning to develop 3 sets of modules at different times. It sends its first cohort of modules through the Project Initiation Milestone Review, then awards a contract for development and begins work. When those modules are ready for deployment, CMS performs an operational milestone review on them. Meanwhile, the state is finishing the planning of its second cohort of modules, so it schedules a Project Initiation Milestone Review with its RO for the second cohort. After 6 months of operation, the first cohort of modules is eligible for final certification milestone review, provided the system has been running in accordance with all federal regulations and is meeting the criteria found in the checklists. Once the modules pass this review, the state can start collecting operations and maintenance federal funds participation for those modules. The process is very flexible. These kinds of high-level milestone review plans are decided between the state and CMS during the first activity in the life cycle. The first activity in the life cycle is an informal consult that the state initiates with the CMS regional office, where the state shares with CMS its thoughts about updating its MMIS. This consult occurs before any PAPD is submitted because early feedback from CMS can prevent a lot of rework for the state later. If the state is entering the life cycle mid-flight, it will still consult with its RO and fill out a project partnership understanding. During the consult, a few things are accomplished. First, the state and CMS agree upon a preliminary, high-level schedule for milestone reviews based on that state's plans up to that point. This enables the state to build the milestone reviews into its project schedule. Secondly, CMS and the state decide how frequently the IV&V progress reports will be generated. At a minimum, they must be generated quarterly, but some projects may warrant more frequent reports. This schedule is decided during the consult so that the state can include this information in its IV&V RFIs and RFPs. Thirdly, the state selects a checklist set for use for the entire MMIS project. There are two checklist set choices, the MMIS module checklist set or a custom set of checklists arranged by the state. In most cases, states will use the MMIS module checklist set for their projects. The second option is only for exceptional cases where non-traditional solutions cannot be covered under the MMIS module checklist set. The customized approach requires approval from CMS. Also, states may not switch between sets. A state may not use checklists from the MMIS module checklist set for a few modules, and then switch to the custom checklist set option. These decisions are captured in a project partnership understanding document, which should be updated throughout the life cycle as necessary. Another key activity is the IAPD submission. The toolkit does not alter the APD process, but it does explain how the certification process and the APD process overlap. The state does not submit its IAPD until after it has received the IV&V contractor's IV&V progress report. This allows the state to remedy any issues before it submits the IAPD. The initial project initiation milestone review is held within 30 days of the IAPD submission. Approval of the IAPD itself does not depend upon the project initiation milestone review. To prepare for a milestone review, the state fills out the state portions of the checklist that apply to the modules undergoing the milestone review. The state stores the checklists and supporting evidence in its own repository. The IV&V contractor then reviews the answers and evidence, completes the reviewer sections of the checklist, and completes the IV&V and programmatic tabs of the MMIS IV&V progress report template. The completed checklists are appended to the report. Even if a state is using multiple development vendors, the IV&V contractor only prepares a single report that covers all modules. The IV&V contractor then submits the report and checklist simultaneously to the state, to the CMSRO, and to the CMS certification email address. When the state receives the checklist from the IV&V contractor, it should save them in the state repository as new versions. Between 6 and 2 weeks before the milestone review, the state will need to grant CMS access to the evidence. States should talk to their ROs about gaining access to the CMS repository. Uploading artifacts to the CMS repository is the preferred method of submitting materials. However, the state may also grant CMS direct access to the state's evidence repository. It is critical that all HIPAA regulations are followed when submitting evidence that contains protected health or personally identifiable information, PHI or PII. For the project initiation and operational milestone reviews, the milestone reviews consist of CMS reviewing the checklists and IV&V progress report and providing a response. The milestone review is concluded when CMS sends copies of the completed progress report to the state and to the IV&V contractor. Usually, no site visit is required. However, there may be cases where CMS considers a more formal review to be appropriate and may schedule a teleconference or site visit for the milestone review. In such cases, CMS will notify the state if this is necessary and will work with the state to schedule the review. When requesting a final certification milestone review, the state needs to ensure that the IV&V contractor has sent all completed checklists and the progress report. The state has submitted a formal request letter that includes a proposed milestone review date and a copy of the acceptance letter to the development contractor. And the state has granted CMS access to the checklist evidence and all required artifacts from the required artifacts list. No final certification review will be scheduled until these actions have been completed. To recap, in Section 1 we toured the Toolkit's components. In Section 2, we looked at the certification lifecycle and how states can transition into it. And in Section 3, we examined how states can prepare for milestone reviews. We hope that this video has been helpful. Please visit our frequently asked questions page at the Medicaid.gov location shown below.